How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. As the trade deadline and buyout market approach, rumors will continue to spread, linking the Lakers to players that may become available. However, I really believe they should try to key in on a few certain players that would really help improve their team. While there are no guarantees that any of these players will for sure become available, I'm going to explain to you what I believe to be their ideal scenario in the trade deadline and buyout market approaching. To be clear, the trade deadline and buyout market are kind of intertwined because immediately after the trade deadline is over, that is when players really begin to start getting bought out more. I'm not really saying that the Lakers will be making any big moves at the trade deadline with any trades, but any quote-unquote big moves that they'll be making will almost certainly be through the buyout market, as they don't have a lot of financial flexibility to make a big trade work, even though they still could potentially be involved in a smaller trade. And of course, it's all only hypothetical and only for fun, so don't take any of it too seriously. You're of course free to disagree with me, and I actually really enjoy having friendly discussions with all of you in the comments when you have slightly differing opinions or point of views than I do, so feel free to comment what would be your ideal scenario for them down below. But with all of that being said, let's get into what I believe to be their ideal scenario for the trade deadline and buyout market. Like I mentioned before, I don't believe they'll be involved in any major trades, but I do think it would be a good idea to potentially get involved in a smaller trade, and one of my favorite smaller trades that they could realistically get involved in is by trading for Ellington. According to rumors, Detroit has made him available through trade, and I don't think it would take a lot to acquire him. They could acquire him by trading Alfonso McKinney in a second round pick, for example. Again, not a big move by any means, but one that could potentially really benefit their team. Ellington has been one of the best three-point shooters in the entire NBA this year. He's actually been having one of the best years of his entire career too, which goes to show you how much game he has left and is really far from being washed up. While I do think McKinney is a pretty good player, he isn't a rotation player for them, and they could easily flip him for a player like Ellington, who could add a much-needed three-point shooter to their team. While the Lakers were hoping that Wesley Matthews would be able to fill the role of their three-point shooter off the bench, he hasn't been able to do that unfortunately. He could still get back on track, but adding Ellington would be a good way of not having to solely rely on Matthews to eventually start playing better. Ellington is an extremely good three-point shooter, and he is a difficult shot maker too. He isn't your typical catch-and-shoot three-point shooter. He will often take and make tough three-point shots off the dribble and while on the move coming off of screens. Along with that, he is a capable defender too. I wouldn't call him a great defender, but he is definitely capable of defending most opposing shooting guards out on the perimeter. He has decent height and length, which does allow him to match up with guards and smaller forwards. Overall, I think he would be a very good addition to their team, and by trading for him, he would allow them to retain an opening on their roster for a potential buyout candidate. And that is where we'll be moving towards now. Like I mentioned before, any big acquisitions they make will have to be through the buyout market. And while this first move isn't a huge move, I do think it would go a long way in improving their depth on the wing. And the player I'm referring to them adding here is Trevor Ariza. I think he's in practically every fan's ideal plan for the Lakers in the buyout market, as not only is he a fan favorite, but he would address a legitimate need that they have. He would provide them with a bigger 3-and-D wing defender, so they don't have to solely rely on only Kuzma and LeBron to match up with bigger wing players. They've often used Caldwell Pope to try and defend these types of players, but that really isn't the ideal matchup for him. He's good at defending guards and smaller wing players, but oftentimes bigger wing players will take advantage of him, which is why a crafty veteran defender like Ariza would be great for their team. Even now at 35 years old, he is far from being washed up. He hasn't played in a game this year, but only a year ago with Portland prior to the NBA bubble, he made a very positive impact on their team on both ends of the court. He dramatically helped improve their defense, and they really began to make their playoff push after adding him to their team. During his time in Portland, he averaged over 1.5 steals per game, along with averaging over 10 points a game, while shooting 40% from the three-point line. He has retained a lot of his athletic ability, which has helped him to remain a good defender, now even in his mid-30s. His three-point shooting and wing defending ability could potentially add a lot to a Laker team that could really use a lot of help in both of those areas. With that, he would also add a player that has a ton of playoff experience over his 15-year career. In my opinion, he'd fit right in on a veteran team like the Lakers, who have the goal of winning another championship. He'd be exactly the type of player that would help fill out the remaining needs of their team and really help to make them look complete. And with that, you might be thinking, well, that would be their 15th player on their team, and they wouldn't be able to make any more moves. However, Damian Jones is only on a 10-day contract and isn't guaranteed to remain on their team. And while I personally really do like Damian Jones and think he isn't a bad option for them, I don't think anyone would deny that Andre Drummond wouldn't be better than him. And that is the route I'm going to take with my ideal scenario for them. Obviously, this is where the ideal part comes into play, as it is far from a guarantee to happen. For the Lakers to have a chance at adding him to their team, they need Cleveland to not be able to find a trade partner for him and instead buy him out of his contract. And then they need to persuade Drummond that joining their team on a veteran minimum would be the best idea for him. However, if he does become available in the buyout market, I really do believe he should consider them as the best team for him. And why do I believe that he should pick them over the Brooklyn Nets, who could offer him more money? Well, I do because the Lakers would have a much bigger role to offer him, which will be important to him because he'll be auditioning for a new contract, as he will be a free agent following this season. If he were to join Brooklyn, who already has DeAndre Jordan, Jeff Green, Kevin Durant, and now Blake Griffin too, who all play at power forward and even center at times for them, they wouldn't have a large role to offer him. The Lakers, however, who are without Anthony Davis for at least another 2 to 3 weeks, and who aren't relying heavily on Marc Gasol, would have a very large role to offer him. And I do think that would be very important to his potential decision to join their team. A couple more $1 million might sound good right now, but getting a larger role on a similarly contending team like the Lakers would allow him to really audition for a new contract that could potentially pay him anywhere between $10 to $20 million a year for the next 4 years. And when you look at it that way, I don't think that a few extra $1 million right now would really mean all that much to him in the end. If the Lakers were able to add him, even though I don't think he's a perfect fit for their team, he would be a big boost to them, especially while AD is off the court. He could step right into their starting center role and really provide them with a much better all-around defender and rebounder than Marc Gasol at this point. No, he isn't a three-point shooter, but what he brings as a rebounder and hustle player would work really well on the floor with players like Schroeder and LeBron, who can create their own shot and make plays for others. With that, Drummond would give them a true lob target too. We've seen how beneficial a player like Damian Jones has even been to them in that regard, with having a true lob threat on the floor really allows players like LeBron and Schroeder to have a good target when they're attacking the rim and the opposing team's big man crashes down on them. Along with that, Drummond would work really well on the floor with both Anthony Davis when he is healthy and Markieff Morris, both of which can step out to the three-point line. And by adding Drummond, that will conclude my ideal scenario for their team at the trade deadline and buyout market. I believe both Wayne Ellington and Trevor Ariza are both very realistic targets, but Drummond is far from being a guarantee. However, it could happen, and I believe adding him to their team, along with Ellington and Ariza, would really be their true ideal scenario that is actually in the realm of possibility to happen. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with my ideal scenario for the team at the trade deadline and buyout market, or would you make any changes? Let me know what would be your ideal scenario for them by commenting down below and we can talk about it there. That'll do it for this video though. Thank you to everyone who took the time to watch till the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please remember to drop a like on the video and to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on notifications to get notified right away when I drop a video. But as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.